All right, now in our code behind, we want to use iCommand interface one more time, but this time with selection of a playlist. Now, before we get started, you can see we have a red underline here because we made add playlist method private. We don't need this onAddPlaylist method anymore because now we are using a command in our toolbar item. So let's just delete this event handler. Okay, our code behind is getting cleaner. Now let's create a command for the selection of a playlist. So we go back to our view model. One more time, we declare a public read-only property, public iCommand, and call it select playlist command. Get private set, because we don't want to set it from the outside. It's only the responsibility of this class to set this command. Now here in the constructor, we initialize this property. We set it to a new command, but this time I'm going to use the generic version of the command class. Because select playlist method that we're going to wrap with this command takes a parameter of type playlist view model. So here with the generic version of command class, we can add playlist view model here. And then look at the constructor. It requires an action of playlist view model. So that means a method that takes a playlist view model as a parameter. That's exactly what we want. But there is a tiny problem here. As you can see in the signature here, this action returns void. But if you look at our select playlist method, here we're returning a task, not void. So because this select playlist method is an asynchronous method, we need to use a slightly different technique for initializing this command. Instead of adding the select playlist method name here, look, that doesn't work because the signature of this method does not match. So instead, we need to define an action using a lambda expression. So one more time, look, this action takes a playlist view model object and returns void. How would you represent that using a lambda expression? Well, we would write VM, as in short for view model, goes to, and here's the body of our action. So this lambda expression is like an inline function, inline method. Now in this inline anonymous function, I'm going to manually call select playlist and pass this VM as an argument to this method. Now we have a yellow underline here because our select playlist method is an asynchronous method. So we need to await it. Await. And now because we have used await here, we need to apply async modifier to our lambda expression, which represents an inline function. So async before VM. And finally, semicolon. Now here we have a yellow underline, but that doesn't really mean anything. I believe this is a bug in Xamarin Studio. So here's the takeaway. If your command is going to wrap a method that takes a parameter, you use the generic version of command class. And also, if the target method is async, you cannot put the method name here as an action. So you need to define an asynchronous lambda expression and manually call the target method. That's the technique. Next step, we're going to make this method private because we can always access it via the command. So our command is ready. Now let's go to XAML and use data binding. So here is item selected attribute, which we have set to onPlaylist selected method. But unfortunately, we do not have a command for item selected. So if we type command, look, the only command supported by ListView is refresh command. Now, I don't know the reason we do not have a command for selection of items at this stage. It could be by design, or it could be because Xamarin is still evolving. But that aside, the workaround that is to manually execute the command in our event handler. So we go to the code behind. Now we cannot call select playlist. Instead, we reference select playlist command and call execute method. Now this execute method, look at the signature. It requires an object. But here we're giving it a playlist view model. So we need to remove this casting. Also, we have a red underline because earlier I put this await here, and this was purely to get rid of a yellow warning. You probably didn't do this step, so let's just remove this await. And this method should not be async. So we simply access the command and execute it. Now we can make this code a little bit cleaner. So instead of getting this binding context and casting it as playlist view model, we can declare a property of type playlists view model and call it view model. And in the getter, we simply return binding context and cast it as playlists view model. Also in the setter, we can set binding context to value. And with this property, first we can replace this ugly expression with view model. And also in the constructor, instead of going directly to binding context, we can use view model. Now look at our code behind. We still have some code here, so we cannot always make this code behind completely empty. Sometimes you need to manually execute a command in your view model. So here's one example. Another example could be in onAppearing method. Imagine when the page loads, we're going to call a web service to get the list of playlists. Implementation of that is in our view model, and we're going to expose a command like load playlists. And then here, in onAppearing method, we would call view model.load playlists command.execute. Something like this. So this is all about MVVM.